Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this CQI and IRCA webinar, Transition, Your Questions Answered. Very pleased that you've been able to take a little bit of time out of your day to spend with us, finding out a little bit more about transition requirements. I'll just go through a few housekeeping items while we wait for a few additional attendees to perhaps join us. For those of you who aren't familiar, we're using the GoToWebinar webinar solution, and you've got a toolbar which should show on the bottom or top right hand corner of your screen, which will allow you to interact with us. This will be an interactive session, so you will be able to pose questions to us in writing using the questions module. It's worth familiarizing yourself with how that works now while we're waiting for the additional attendees to join us. If you click on the questions module, drop that down, you'll then be able to ask questions which we will respond to at the end. So without further ado, we will start this afternoon's session. So here are the topics that we're going to be covering this afternoon. First of all, there are three of us on the line today. First one is me, Graham Kench. I'm CQI and IRCA Membership Manager. My colleague Caroline Wadham is joining us as well. She's one of our most experienced member journey advisors, and she is responsible for advising our auditors on a day-to-day basis about what they need to do to transition. We also have the pleasure of Alexander Wood's company. He is policy manager here at the CQI and IRCA, and he may be able to add some insights throughout the session and at the end when questions are asked. So the topics for today, we're just going to go through a brief introduction as to why we're all here, the benefits of transition. Alex will spend a little bit of time roughly in the middle of the session talking about the principal areas for auditor development. We'll go through the IRCA transition policy itself in some detail, and then, as I said, at the end there'll be 10 minutes or so for your questions. So the presentation itself should take around 45 minutes, and we aim to let you get back to your days at about 4 o'clock this afternoon or just before. So if we set the scene, why are we all here? So in 2015, as you know, two key standards were revised, and those were QMS ISO 9001 and EMS ISO 14001, and the revisions were really quite significant. Management systems essentially and the audit thereof will be different as a consequence of these pretty significant changes, and that means that upskilling of auditors is required. So the CQI and IRCA published our official policy for transition, and we did that on the 6th of July 2015. And as I've alluded to before, we consider the changes in the 2015 versions as highly significant. So just to talk you through who must transition, I'll hand over to Caroline now, and she'll just let you know exactly who needs to undertake transition. Over to you, Caroline.
So we are asking the auditors certified in the 4 schemes that you can see on your screen to have taken an IRCA-approved transition training course. So first of all, there's the QMS scheme, which is 9001, EMS, which is 14001, and then also Maritime and Aerospace. So if there's any IRCA certified auditors that are certified to any of these 4 schemes, we've asked them to undertake an IRCA certified transition course to the 2015 standard, just to make sure that they're keeping up to date with it, and that was part of the 2015 publish. So as I'm sure that you're all aware already, the new changes will require all auditors to show that they've developed knowledge and skills. So this will help you audit more effectively against the requirements of the new standards. So it's just going to make sure that you're keeping up to date, and also ensuring that you've got the knowledge and the skills for that as well. So the benefits for undertaking IRCA certified transition training. Undertaking IRCA certified training, it will give you the latest knowledge and skills. So all the information in the courses is up to date and current. So it just makes sure that you're being taught all the relevant and current information, and it puts you ahead of the competition. All the courses that are certified give a wide overview of the transition training, so it just puts you ahead of other auditors who may not have completed IRCA certified transition training. So we've asked all our auditors to complete this type of training by the 1st of September 2018. So to do this by this date will ensure that you maintain your IRCA certification and are up to date with all your knowledge and your skills in either 4 of those schemes. So I'm now going to hand you over to Alex for a bit, who will talk about the areas of audited development that the 2 schemes have brought.
Thank you. In both 9 and 14,001, the changes that were introduced are viewed by IRCA to be significant, not just for auditors, but also for organisations and those within those organisations responsible for the management, implementation and maintenance of their management systems. To look in a little bit of detail at what those key changes are, first of all, the adoption of Annex SL, which has been adopted by both 9001/2015 and 14,001/2015. The core changes implied in this include the use of a high-level structure, so a framework on which all ISO management system standards subsequent to the introduction of Annex SL are based. The introduction of common text and identical core text throughout those management system standards, and common terms and definitions. This means that even when requirements are essentially the same between the 2008 and 2015 versions of 9001, for example, they may well be found under a new clause or subclause heading. So there's a clear requirement here for auditors to ensure that they know and understand the latest versions of the standards, what they look like, and where to find the pertinent information. One of the most significant changes in the latest versions of the standards pertain to management, the switch from management commitment to leadership and commitment. And these changes represent a very deliberate attempt by the standards writers to embed responsibility for the operation and performance of the QMS at all levels of an organisation. It can't just be farmed out to a management representative. It's not the sole responsibility of the quality team or the quality manager. These leadership changes have considerable implications, not just for those who are going to be auditing top management, but for top management themselves, who, as well as being subject to audit, will be expected to know and understand the QMS in more detail than perhaps would have been assumed previously. Clause 4 context is another major change, which has proved challenging for auditors and for management systems managers. And in order to be able to audit context effectively, QMS auditors need to have formulated a thorough picture of the context of an organisation prior to carrying out any assessment. The auditor will not be able to conclude if requirements surrounding internal and external issues and the relevant interests of relevant interested parties are being addressed unless they have an appreciation prior to audit of what these should reasonably be. So this will require additional planning, potentially using unfamiliar reference sources. Auditors must also understand the link between the context of the organisation, the planning the organisation does in respect of its management system, and the operation, and be comfortable in auditing these interdependencies. The process approach is not something that is brand new to either 9000 or 14001-2015, introduced as far back as 2000. But evidence has suggested that it's not well understood and it's not well applied. Given that the 2015 version of the standard places an increased emphasis on the process approach, and this being one of the core concepts underpinning the new standard, as you can see from reading the introduction, it's essential that auditors understand what is meant by the process approach and what they need to do in order to assess its implementation by the organisation. Risk-based thinking is another of the core concepts that underpin the 2015 version of these standards, and auditors need to understand how risk-based thinking must be applied by the organisation to the management system, and in particular how it should be applied in respect of planning and operation. Finally, with respect to ISO 9001, the 2015 version of the standard removes the requirements for an organisation to hold either a quality manual or quality procedures. References to documents and records are also removed. So while organisations may choose to retain similar documented evidence as previously, the organisation can similarly choose what information it wishes to maintain or retain in order to demonstrate conformance. Documented information can be held in any format and on any media of the organisation's choosing. So an auditor cannot rely on a nice, neat pile of paperwork to demonstrate compliance with the requirements of the standards, as they may potentially have enjoyed in the past, but are likely to be faced with a more divergent range of reference sources from which they're going to have to draw conclusions. With respect to ISO 14001, we identified a seventh principal area of change, the previous 6 being the same as with 9001, around new and revised EMS specific requirements. Where the 2015 version of ISO 14001 introduces new requirements relating to scope and applicability, life cycle perspective, and the control of outsourcing. There are also revised requirements in the areas of policy, communication, performance and evaluation, and management review. In respect of both these standards and all the key changes that have been identified here, auditors must understand these changes and their implications and have the skill to audit against these requirements effectively.
So now we're going to talk about why IRCA certified training. So we've ensured that the IRCA certified training courses that have been IRCA approved are course consistent criteria that ensures that consistent coverage of all areas of audited development. And this just means that all relevant areas that you'll find in your day-to-day auditing activities will be covered, and it just ensures that you'll get an in-depth knowledge for that. So we don't know that of other courses if that's covering the same, but with IRCA certified training, you're guaranteed that you're going to get a strong overview, and you're also going to get practical training and theory as well, just so you can confidently approach the new standard.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. So we're going to look at some of the exceptions in terms of what is acceptable by IRCA. So if we move on to the next slide, essentially acceptability of non-IRCA transition training is really limited to circumstances where there isn't a course available in the country concerned. However, training that isn't IRCA certified may be acceptable, but you will just need to be able to demonstrate that you've addressed the skills and knowledge requirements in some other way.
So I'm going to show you now how you can find a course on our website. I found from my own experience that a lot of members email us looking how to find a course, but it's actually quite simple, and you can find out a course that's best suited for you depending on where you're living. So as you can see, here's a screenshot of of the page. So if you just go to our website, which is quality.org, and then in the training section, there's a Find a Course page. So this will give you an overview of both what the EMS and the QMS 2015 standards are, so you can get an overview as well as if you want to. And then there's also a form that you can complete depending on where you are in the world and what sort of course you're looking for, if you want a modular one or a combined one. So it's quite easy to fill out, and it will give you a large amount of options depending on where you're living. So that's good to take a look at. Obviously, you can always contact us with the contact details, and the member journey team will be able to help you with that. But all of the IRCA certified courses are available on this page, and you can get an overview about dates and the content of the course by clicking on the links that are available. So as I just said, here's the web page. You can access it obviously whenever the websites are. So you should be able to find a course that's in your area and that's relevant for your certification body, for your current scheme.
Okay, that's great. So that's given us a very thorough overview of the subject at hand. And Alex, thank you very much for your very detailed description of the key changes that have come into play. I do actually have a question for you, Alex, which is that presumably many organisations have now moved to the 2015 version of the standard, and they're deriving benefits from doing that. What would you say are the main benefits that organisations are realising having moved to the 2015 version?
The latest iteration of 9001 sets out requirements for design, implementation, operation monitoring, and the improvement of their management systems. And it's really designed to help organizations ensure that they understand and meet the needs and expectations of their customers and other interested parties, as well as any applicable statutory or regulatory requirements, providing that framework within which organizations are expected to continually improve. Now, while the scope and intent of ISO 9001 2015 is not wildly removed from that of its predecessor, the changes that we've discussed before highlight some really fundamental differences and areas of particular interest and attention, both for management systems auditors and for those who manage the quality management systems themselves. I would draw particular attention to the issues around leadership, context, process approach, and risk-based thinking that we've discussed, and the requirements around documented information, and where auditors may be challenged to see evidence in forms and media that they're perhaps not used to.
That's great. Thank you very much for clarifying that, Alex. It's very useful. So I'll now lead us into our open question and answer session. So we still have Alex on the line, Policy Manager at CQI. I'm going to remain around, and we also have Caroline from the Member Journey team, one of the most senior and experienced advisors there. So perhaps we'll start off with some of the questions that are coming through. I have a question in front of me that's come through from Robert, who says that he's an IRCA certified lead auditor. He's taken ISO 9001 2015 transition course, but it's not an IRCA certified course. Which course does he need to take, the modular course or the combined course? Are they offered in the US? Perhaps Caroline, you could give some insights into how Robert can find a course.
Yeah, sure. So for the modular and the combined transition courses, both of them will be accepted by us. As I said a couple of slides ago, if you just go on to that part of the website and fill in those sections, there are courses available in the USA, I believe, but both modular and combined courses will be accepted by us as long as they're IRCA certified transition training, it doesn't matter if it's been taken as part of as a combined one or as a modules, as long as the Annex SL and the scheme specific training is there, that's fine. So as I said earlier, the form that you can use really gives you a peace of mind, because you can search for courses and you can be confident that they'll be accepted there. So that's quite handy. So yeah, either the combined or the modular ones would be fine.
Can I pick up on a point there, both in your question, Robert, and in your response, Caroline, around the modular approach to courses and the combined approach, and why we took that. If I can refer back to Annex SL and the introduction as that as the framework for the revised versions of these standards. And this also applies to those of you who may audit against 27001 information security management systems. In designing these courses and identifying the changes between them, we acknowledge that there is common ground, partly driven by Annex SL and partly by common themes that are being introduced across management system standards. So rather than asking auditors to undergo the same training twice because they happen to be auditing against two separate standards, the first module of the transition training addresses that commonality. It addresses the Annex SL bit and the common skills that you'll encounter across all revised ISO management system standards. The second module addressing the scheme-specific bits. So where you may have completed either a combined course or just the Annex SL, the first module in the modular series of courses, IRCA CQI does not expect you to repeat that training. Some of you may be preparing to migrate from BSEN 18001 to ISO 45001, and IRCA migration training courses are now available, as is the guide to ISO 45001. Which we've produced to help you through this migration process. And the same rules apply. Where you've already done the first module, the Annex SL bit, we're not expecting you to repeat that.
Right, so looking at the questions again, I've got a question from Lorenzis. He visited the IRCA website but couldn't find an IRCA certified transition training provided in Edmonton, Alberta in Canada. He's asked us to advise if this is correct, or at least the nearest city where the training is provided. Graham, I think you've got an answer on that one.
Yeah, I think I might be able to answer that one. So thanks for your question. I don't know which of the two standards you're looking to complete this transition training for, but I did have a quick look while Alex was talking on the website there for ISO 9001 transition training. And you're correct that there aren't any combined transition courses in Canada, but there are modular transition training courses available. And I just ran a quick search, and there are 3 approved training partners there: Ashbrook Quality Assurance Limited, SGS, and Resource Inspections Canada Incorporated, that all offer the modular transition training course. So I'd advise you to look on the find a course page and select course PT234, which is the specific modular transition training for ISO 9001 2015. So hopefully that's answered your question. Moving through to the next question we have. Yes, so thanks for confirming it was ISO 9001 2015. So it looks like we've answered your question there. Another question we've got is the ISO 9001 2015 training provided by online course providers such as Exemplar Global acceptable to IRCA? And I don't know which of Caroline or Alex might like to pick up on the answer to that.
I'm happy to do so. In designing the course criteria for the IRCA certified transition training courses, we were very sure that we covered all the key in the detail that, that the time allocated would allow, to really make sure that we're supporting all IRCA certified auditors in their professional development, and making sure that they maintain the competence that, that the wider market expects of someone carrying the IRCA, an IRCA card. Now, those training courses are specifically designed to cover both the knowledge and the skill elements, the practical application of that knowledge and understanding, to really demonstrate that that the implications of the changes to the standards have been learnt and understood and can be applied. In that regard, we're looking for in instances where alternative training courses have been completed, or where IRCA certified transition training is not available, we're looking for a similar level of focus on both knowledge and the application of skill in any training activity that's been undertaken. So what I would recommend would be to provide the member journey team with a summary of the course criteria and what it covered, and where possible map it against the IRCA certified course criteria, so we can assess whether or not, and this applies to course criteria from any other training provider, so we can assess whether and where the IRCA course criteria have been met.
Okay, so thank you, Alex. I'm just going to answer another question about IRCA certification. So Lorenzo has again asked if we would immediately terminate an auditor's IRCA certification if he or she failed to upgrade by the 1st of September 2018, or can they ask for an extension? Graham again has an answer for that. So.
Yes, thank you, Caroline. The answer to that is essentially the deadline is the 1st of September 2018. So any auditor that hasn't completed transition training by that date would no longer remain on the IRCA register. So that is a fixed deadline, but we are providing every level of support to people to complete their training by that deadline. So very good question. That has been in our policy for a few years now, and we are hoping to support every auditor to complete the required training to show that their competence is kept fully up to date by that date. Looking at the next question, there seems to be a very similar question to the one that Alex just answered, actually. So there's a question about having completed a transition course that wasn't necessarily IRCA certified. Will that be considered? And I think, as Alex alluded to, as long as you can demonstrate that you've gained the knowledge and the skills in some other way, then you should get in touch with the member journey team with evidence of what you've completed, the knowledge that you've gained, and we'll have a look at that and assess it on a case-by-case basis.
There's a subsequent question in a similar vein about training being delivered by a certification body. In these instances, if you do work for a certification body, many of them have already approached IRCA with details of their auditor transition training criteria for assessment against it. So if you are a third-party auditor working for a certification body, it's worth speaking to your IRCA representative or someone who has an established relationship with IRCA to see if we've already assessed the course criteria that they offer against the IRCA transition training course criteria.
The next questions come through from Bardia. Thank you very much for your question. Again, it's relating to availability of IRCA-approved transition training in Canada. I would encourage you to have another look at the Find a Course page because it might be that you're just selecting the combined version of the transition training, which you're correct isn't available in Canada. However, the modular course is available there through 3 providers. So I'd encourage you to search using the QMS ISO 9001:2015 modular transition course, and you should then find the 3 providers that do operate within Canada. So I'd encourage you to have a look there.
Also, I just think I'll probably raise a question that a lot of our members have had that I've found. A lot of them are unsure how they can update their certification to the 9000 or 14001:2015 standard. All that you would need to do is send us an email with a copy of the IRCA certified transition training certificate attached. And you don't need to attach the course outline or anything else related to that. Just the transition course certificate would be perfectly fine. Unfortunately, with IRCA certified transition training at the moment, we aren't automatically notified of people that have done the courses. So if you think that you've done a course already and it hasn't updated on your file, then just send us an email with that attached and we can get that updated for you. I think that's quite a common question that we found that we've got relating to transition training.
That's great. It's worth pointing out at this point that if there are questions that come through that we don't get a chance to answer during the session, don't worry, we will be publishing a list of questions and answers after this session. So keep asking questions. If we don't quite get to yours, then we will take it away from this session today, and we will then arrange to answer and publish the question and the answer on the website at a future date.
And also, if you have any questions that come into your head after it's ended, just send an email into auditors@quality.org, and we'll be able to answer you and help you if you're looking for an IRCA certified course in your area as well.
That's a really good point, Caroline. Yes, because often we can give you that little bit of extra advice to help you find the right course. It might not be immediately obvious, but if we can just give you a bit of guidance, then that will often help.
May I pick up another question from Dan around those transition courses, non-IRCA transition courses, which are acceptable. As per the transition policy, we are willing to consider under exceptional circumstances evidence of the acquisition of the associated knowledge and skill through other routes where a certified transition training is not available or has been delivered through a third-party accredited certification body. Now, we can provide some information on courses which have already been assessed against our criteria. But if there is any specific training courses which you've attended or that you would like us to have a look at, then please do send it through, and we can assist in that regard. There's another question that's come in from Richard asking, what else do you expect auditors outside the technical skill and knowledge associated with the standards to be able to do, which I think is quite an interesting question. Because there are a number of interested parties, let's say, to the management system. who are not necessarily auditors, not necessarily quality managers, or experienced management systems professionals, who are going to have to take a more active role in the planning and operation of the management system. And most pertinently, this applies to leadership, to top management. And in both these standards, as the Annex SL definition provides, when we're talking about top management, we're talking about the person or group of people at the highest level of an organisation. And when we describe the organisation, it's in terms of the scope of the management system. So whoever is in control of the organisation as defined by that scope at the very highest level has to have an active and hands-on involvement. Now, many of these people will not be experienced with quality, will not understand the framework that these ISO standards, management system standards, offer. So there's a real role, if not an opportunity here, for management systems auditors to essentially be coaches, to be teachers for those in their organisations who have to come to terms with the requirements of the standard, but are not familiar with it. And in that respect, auditors are going to have to speak to those people in a different kind of language. I don't imagine many finance directors or CEOs are going to be particularly excited by discussions about clause 5.1.2, as some of us may be. But they are going to be interested in discussing the implications of their contribution to the management system of business, to talk about the bottom line, to talk about the importance of understanding the needs of their customers and stakeholders and what they have to do with respect to the quality management system in meeting that. So as well as an exercise in teaching top management what the management system means to them, there's also a job in interpreting what this ISO speak, if you like, means for organisations outside of the direct realm of the quality management and audit team.
Thanks, Alex. That was a useful bit of insight that really brought to life why all of this is happening. I'm just looking at a question that's come in from Fernanda, who's also having trouble finding a course in Portugal. I've just run a quick search on the Find a Course section, and again, I think the issue might be that there are no combined transition courses in Portugal, but there are indeed some modular ones. So I would search by EMS modular transition course, and you'll find that there is a provider approved by IRCA, which is SGS, who actually offer EMS transition courses. So that's probably your best bet, Fernanda, to have another go on that search, that Find a Course tool, and if you just search for a modular transition course, you'll probably have some success.
And also as well, just for anyone else who's looking for a transition course on that page, just so that you're aware, there's 4 different course numbers that you can use, so 2 for each EMS and QMS, so depending on the combined and modular one. So I think, as Graham mentioned earlier, for the QMS one, if in the online form you just type in PT233 or PT234, that will pull up the results for the QMS training. And then for the EMS training, the combined course code is PT215 and the modular is PT216. So just anyone anywhere else in the world looking to complete the training and they don't know if it's in the country that they're living in, just use any of those for course codes. If you didn't get a chance to take them down, don't worry, just contact us and we should be able to help you with that as well.
We'll include these course numbers and any additional notes in the post-webinar materials. So if you didn't manage to scribble down the course numbers that we've been talking about, don't worry, we'll make sure you get them. There's a question here from Samuel regarding 18,001. I did my 18,001 lead auditor course with BSI. It was IOSH accredited. Can I use it to join IRCA or do an IRCA conversion to ISO 45001? There's a question here in two parts. First of all, the IOSH 5-day audit lead audit course for 18,001 is considered an acceptable alternative to the IRCA certified course, as this is material that was historically developed in conjunction, and we know that it meets the same criteria as we expect of IRCA certified training courses as well. As far as 45,001 is concerned, this was published just at the beginning of last week, and the changes between BSEN, OSAS 18,001 and ISO 45,001 are of the same, if not greater magnitude as the changes between the different versions of 9 and 14,001. This is in part due to it being a brand new ISO standard. 18,001 was a British standard, and while it was universally adopted, it's not the same as an ISO standard. 45,001 adopts Annex SL as its framework, so there are commonalities between 9, 14, 45, and I referred earlier to 27,001. There are also similar themes in the scheme-specific content, particularly around risk, around reinforced process approach, similar themes that we've seen in previous revisions. And there's a real emphasis in 45,001 on leadership, but also on worker participation. So 45,001 is a very different beast to its predecessor, 18,001. That being said, as I mentioned earlier on in the Q&A, we're not expecting auditors to have to repeat Module 1 in the transition training, in this instance migration training, as that first module captures the Annex SL bit and the common knowledge and skills that apply across Annex SL based standards. So you would expect auditors wishing to migrate from 18 to 45,001 only to have to do the second module pertaining to the scheme specific areas.
That's great, Alex. Thanks for that. I'm just picking up on a question that James has sent through, which is around what evidence we would like to see to assess non-IRCA course as being equivalent to an IRCA transition training course. I think really the basic information that we would need would be as much detail as you can possibly provide really on the course content. So any slides that you've been sent, any post-course information that you can forward on to us. Essentially what will happen next is one of our assessors will have to go through almost line by line and just assess whether the training does indeed or not meet the principal areas for auditor development set down by IRCA. So if you can send us through as much detail as you possibly can about essentially the syllabus of the course, what was actually covered, the learning outcomes, the course content, anything like that would be extremely useful. It's worth also pointing out that as we get closer to the deadline for transition, at the end of August this year, we will be expecting to be having a look at perhaps some training that is not IRCA approved, and we will be needing to send those out to our technical assessors for review. There may be a small cost associated with that, which will need to be picked up by the individual auditor. It will be a nominal cost, but it would just be to cover the cost of looking through the course syllabus and checking that it exactly is exactly equivalent to the IRCA course in terms of coverage, skills, and knowledge development. So we've answered quite a lot of questions this afternoon already. Thank you very much for those. And as I said, any that we haven't been able to get to, we will publish and we'll respond to in writing on the IRCA website in the next few weeks. Caroline's point is a well-made one also, that if you do think of anything when the webinar finishes shortly, that you had a burning desire to ask us, then don't hesitate to email us, auditors@quality.org, and one of the member journey team will be pleased to offer you some personalised advice.
In addition to that, those of you who are based in the UK or in other areas where there is a local CQI members branch, I'd encourage you to look at upcoming events to engage with the local CQI branch, because you'll find a lot of people there who have either gone through transition training or IRCA certified training against the latest versions of the course criteria, and those who will be able to offer advice and guidance and help engage with the broader CQI community. There was a question earlier on as well about whether this webinar counts as CPD. My answer to that is that if you feel that you've learnt from this webinar and that it's going to help contribute to your professional development, then absolutely, please do include this in your CQI IRCA CPD logs.
And also, just to further on from that point, attending the branch events as well would count as CPD course. As Alex said, if you feel like you've got something from attending that event or having that discussion with that person, or even reading an article that's related to 9001, 14001, or any other scheme, that would be great to include in your CPD logs, as it just shows that you're getting something from it and it's helping your professional development as well.
So just to sort of round off this afternoon's session and begin to draw it to a close, if there are any further questions, then we still have 5 or 10 minutes remaining to answer them. But just to put this session and transition generally in the context of continuing professional development, as we are on that topic now, it's really important for any professional to keep themselves up to date and make sure that their knowledge and skills are continuously recognised as being at the pinnacle of their profession. And IRCA feel that 2015 revisions were highly significant and that they're going to have a big positive impact on the auditing profession, on organisations and their ability to manage their business management systems and audit against them. So this is a real opportunity for auditors to make sure that they're recognised as being a cut above the rest, and hopefully IRCA can support auditors with that through transition training and continued certification. So we'd encourage you to get in touch with us if there's anything that you're concerned about, worried about in terms of being able to meet the deadline of the 1st of September 2018 for transition. So if there's no further questions, I'd like to thank everybody for attending this afternoon. Hopefully you've taken something from it and we've been able to give you a bit of practical hands-on guidance and advice to help you complete your transition. We remain at your disposal, so if there's any further questions, drop them through to us on email, auditors@quality.org, and we'll give you a personalised response. I would like to just thank Caroline and Alex, for your participation today. I think it's been invaluable for our auditors to hear from you. And we've had some really good questions coming through from the audience and some good helpful answers as well. So thank you very much for your input and contributions.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for everyone for attending.
Yeah, and thanks, and obviously just drop us an email or a call if you have any other questions.
A really good question that's just come through, which is, are we going to be sharing the PowerPoint presentation? We have indeed recorded today's session, so we will be able to publish a recording of this webinar at a future date on the quality.org website, so look out for that. That's great. So without further ado, thank you very much to everybody for your attention and for your attendance. We've enjoyed hosting this. We hope you've enjoyed being part of it, and we will speak to you again very soon.